the first thing I guess I'm wondering is how do you handle everything that you do? Because you have the record labels, you have a podcast, you're touring, you're in the studio, you have so much going on at once. How do you handle everything? How do you?
I think that's a fantastic question.
And,
we wonder about that every day, but I think what we really do have, and what has happened over the years, is that we have a really, really good team. And now that we recently moved our music studio next to our office as well, it's become ever more evident how many amazing people make Anjuna beats, and all the related things happen for us. So we're really fortunate to have those people.
Yeah, when you see something that we do, there's normally a bigger story than that to it. We're the front end of it in a sense. A lot of the ideas are ours, but we have a lot of people helping us realize those ideas.
And between the three of you, do you specific tasks? Each of you have specific tasks, or you all kind of work on everything together? Do you divvy it up? How do you divvy it up?
I mean, we divvy it up in terms of things that people are enthusiastic about. Whether it's a particular track that someone's originated, or idea or song, or like Pave's very much into the visuals for the
he does
the live show. Yeah, we all do it, but he does most of that indeed. Yeah, exactly. And I think that you've got to stick to your strengths, and it's not a case of we sort of divide things up as stuff gets done, and things that people are enthusiastic about become what Above and Beyond does at the moment.
Do you think there's any drawbacks of having a trio as opposed to just a single act?
Well, I think sometimes if you've got a really clear idea of something, there's a tendency that stuff could get diluted in the mix. If there's a really pure idea for a track, or something like that, you've got to sometimes stand up for that idea if you think it's really important, because otherwise, if creativity mixes with compromise, and you might lose something along the way. So I think that's really important.
I'd also say that it often takes a lot longer to do things.
It's a slow operation.
So that we get everybody equally
yeah.
excited and involved in things. So it does slow it down, but maybe that's also a good thing.
And you don't perform as a trio, you rarely perform as a trio, not very much. Is that because there's always someone kind of, off taking care of something else? Or?
Yeah, I think two egos is enough at any given time. It's three's a crowd really when it comes to performing. I think when we did the acoustic show, it's a different thing because we've all got our own instruments that we play. But in terms of DJing, there's only so much you can do really. So three's a bit of a crowd in that scenario.
So how do you determine when you're going to bring all three out?
We do it once in a while because we don't do it too often. Therefore, it's more exciting. Yeah, I think if we did it all the time, we wouldn't enjoy doing it. But it's fun when it is the three of us for a couple of times a year, like for ABGT 100, work with three people, and it's something that's good then. And also, we're presenting the radio show, so there's more jobs if you like, because one of us will be running backstage to talk on the radio as well as performing.
So, you've been doing this for almost 15 years now. You've been in the industry and the business a really long time. How do you think EDM and just the whole music scene in general has changed in the last 15 years? And how do you as artists kind of keep up and keep relevant? Because it's changing so much. So many new artists are breaking onto the scene. What do you have to do to kind of keep up and keep relevant?
Yeah, when we started at sort of end of '99,
it was a completely different back then, right?
Yeah, it was a very, very different world. And I think, a lot of the access to people's lives was through big companies and big record labels, and we started with the internet being a real sort of core thing of our whole label and the way that people get our music. And I think the biggest thing that has happened in the last 15 years is the internet really blossoming into the incredible thing that it is these days, and helping people get access to the music that they like all at the same time. And I think that timing difference has really also meant that records' life cycles have become maybe shorter. It's been much simpler for small labels to pop up, so now there's so many labels.
There's more competition.
Yeah, and I think what's become more important, I think, is helping people find the music that they like, and that in this world of plenty and so much music, it's really important to get help, I suppose, to really figure out what it is that you want to be interested in.
One thing I love about it is there's a lot of money being thrown around, right? But at the same time, ultimately, the great thing about dance music, and it's kind of always been this way, is about the record. If someone comes along with a great record, that just trumps all of these companies trying to get a share of this, trying to brand that, trying to whatever. You know, you can't falsify that hype. You know,
in the end,
a
it's
good
all about
record
the
trumps
music,
all.
right? Yeah, exactly.
I mean, yes, there is an element of marketing, and yeah, you know, people complain about that, but you know, if there's a brilliant record, the public vote, and that's, you know, that's true in dance music more than any other genre, I feel.
Yeah, and I think now it's much simpler for that great track to start getting the early exposure.
Yeah.
Because it's become possible.
Yeah, because there's not that filter,
Exactly.
which is also a negative sometimes as well, because I think, you know, there needs to be sort of investment as well in artists, but, you know, and now there doesn't need to be because you can stick anything out, whereas
Put it
before
on SoundCloud.
before you'd have to commit to pressing up a vinyl, which might cost you a couple of grand or whatever, which is a good and a bad thing, you know, there's a good and bad side to that.
And you guys recently put out an acoustic album near the beginning of the year, and I'm just curious where that idea came from, because it's kind of a departure. It's something we don't really see in EDM much. So whose idea was that, and what were the challenges associated with that?
Well, the acoustic project was really Tony's thing that he wanted to actually do for a really long
This is
time.
brainchild.
Yeah, and I think he's always sort of thought that, yeah, we're a band anyway, and so much of what we do is centered around songwriting, and we can all play instruments. So he was always wanting us to find a way to do it, and he got chatting with his friend Bob Bradley, who's an incredibly talented music producer, and yeah, Bob and Tony together sort of did a couple of mixes of tracks, and a couple of years later we'd done a film at the Portrait Hall and played a couple of nights at the Greek in LA. So
It's an awesome album. It's great.
Can I wrap this up? Sorry, guys.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, last question. So you've kind of managed to stay out of the mainstream spotlight throughout your careers, yet you've still amassed this, you know, huge fan base. Has that been like a conscious choice not to go very mainstream, like someone like Calvin Harris, Deadmau5, and kind of just stay more under the radar, but still build a huge fan base?
I think you've got to stick to what you sort of believe in. You know, I love some pop music, I love some, you know, underground dance music, I love lots of things, and I think you've just got to do what feels right to you at the time, and sometimes that might not always be what your audience want. You know, some tracks that we release are quite polarizing, like a track like Walter White. I've seen some horrible things said about that track. It's actually one of my favorite ones as well. But, you know, some people hate that stuff, and you know, it's whatever we feel like doing at the time. And I think, you know, some of our fans realise that, and some of our fans don't. Some of them think, oh, you know, they've done that because of this, or done that. Actually, it's really not that complicated. It's just like what we fancy doing normally at the time. And I think that's the key. You've got to be in the driving seat of your career, and not. You can't. It's a strange relationship, you know, because on the one hand, you know, our fans are the most important thing, but on the other hand, if we weren't doing what we believed in, then they wouldn't be there. So on the one hand, you need to, you have to balance it. When you're doing a show, I think at that point you are then looking at everything that Above and Beyond has done and going, right, what do they want to hear, and at the same time mixing in some of the things that you want to push forward. But when you're in the studio, it's a bit contrived if you're just kind of thinking about, oh, this is going to make the crowd go crazy. If you're just writing music to perform that function, obviously there's a bit of that, you know, you think, oh, this will sound really good in the club and things like that, but you've got to get that balance right. I think that's the key.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot for having us.